Morning, everyone. Welcome to Hire Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Lotzer, happy to be your host, and I'm joined by my colleague Vern Schellinger to answer your job search questions. So we can start with any topic you like. If it's a specific question about where you're at, a generic topic, we are here to support you. So who wants to kick us off? I know, Alice, you're not shy.
I know I'm not shy, but I would, Saul, would you mind sharing? We typically talk about what we're looking for. You know, we call it a 45-second elevator pitch, but I think since you're new, it'd be great to hear about you.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I am an office manager for service companies under 50 employees, recently displaced. So I'm looking for my next opportunity. And one issue I have is connecting with the hiring directors or the owners of those small businesses. What I give to the owners is I give them more of their time back instead of them having to spend 30% of their time with office management details. I do that and allow them to continue what makes them genius.
Right. So is your question when you say how to connect with the hiring directors, do you meaning in your job search? So do you have a specific question around that? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Just in general, how to, I've used LinkedIn, just how to find the hiring director or the owner, because they're typically smaller companies.
Right.
So I would connect directly to the owner. That would be the person who is the main beneficiary of my services.
Sure. Are you looking, just another question, are you trying to stay in a specific industry, or you're just looking for small businesses in general?
Small service industry businesses in the Northern Virginia, Fairfax County area.
Service industry, like people who provide HVAC services, like that kind of stuff?
For services, yes. Legal, accounting, doctor, dental, service companies, not selling any specific physical product.
Right. So first of all, you're going to want to come up with a list of those companies, all right? And there are different ways to do that. One of the easiest ways to do that is actually to go to the local chambers of commerce. Okay, before you even touch LinkedIn, which is, you can do that too, and I'll show you how to do that. Just in terms of coming up with an actual list. You're in Reston, right?
Yes.
Okay. And not that you have to stay local, but of course, if you're going to be an office manager, you're typically going to be on site, which means you're going to want to be local-ish. I would go to the Reston Chamber of Commerce. I think Reston Tyson's is kind of one and the same now. And then there's the Nova Chamber of Commerce. Those are two right here in the region. And then there's other ones, like I think Dulles probably has one. I mean, there's Loudon probably, there's different ones in the area. Anyway, if you look them up, they will typically have the list of their member companies, which are the local businesses, which are typically small businesses. A lot of small businesses join chambers of commerce. And if you can come up with a laundry list, then what you do is you take the name of that company, you pop it into LinkedIn. Let me just give you a quick tutorial here. Just share my screen. Okay. So let's say, I don't know, pick the name of a company. I don't know why I use the American Red Cross as an example. Clearly that's not what you're talking about, but I'm just going to use it as the name of an organization that's local.
I think the plumbing and HVAC is good because I've seen a lot of that online looking for office help in those type of, because they're back since post-COVID and all that, they're back in full swing because people are getting their houses done.
Yeah. So what you would do, yeah, sorry, go on.
I am familiar with, and I'm connected with people in the Reston Chamber, the Dulles Herndon Chamber, the Tyson's Northern Virginia Chamber seemed a little off.
Oh.
I'm sure it was just my experience, so that's no problem. But I am connected and some networking groups, so I'm trying to get.
So you're plugged in, and you're plugged into like the business networking groups.
Trying to.
Okay, so there's a couple that that I'm connected with myself, which I'm happy to share with you. But if we can put a pin in that just for 1 second, I'll go back here to LinkedIn, and you just pop the name of the organization into the search bar in the upper left-hand corner, which in this case, I put Red Cross. Here's the Red Cross LinkedIn page. Then we'll go here to the number of employees. It doesn't look like it's hyperlinked, but it is. Okay. And then you go here and you click on, so it has the people button. And here are all these people, right, who work there. And what you do is you're going to go to the All Filters tab, which is in the upper right-hand corner. You would scroll, there's all these different filters. You'd specifically scroll down to the title. Okay. So in your case, you might put an owner, general manager, president, CEO, any of those kinds of #1 titles, and hit show results. So in this case, I know they don't have that particular title. So I'll just put in, I don't know, vice president, right? Which of course they have, I'm sure, a million of these people, large organizations. But anyway, I just put in vice president, and you'll see, Saul, that right, it filters down to the people that have VP in their title. Okay. So that's how you find them. So first I find the list, then you'd go to LinkedIn and then find the people. And then hopefully some of those people, those owners, managers, are going to be second level, hopefully first, but ideally, second level contacts to you, which means, of course, you'll have a first level mutual connection. You would leverage that person. So let's say here, Rana, right, is my second level. And I'd go here and say, oh, okay, who's our mutual connection? Well, it looks like we've got 6 of them. So I would click on that, right? And I've got a bunch of people, and I'd look down and I'd say, well, who am I most closely connected with relationally? Because remember, LinkedIn is just a database. Relationship rules still apply. So I would look down and I'd say, well, it happens to be that I'm not really well, I don't really know a lot of these people. But this person here, Mary, I kind of remember maybe connecting with her or whatever. So I might take a shot at it and say, all right, I'd write to Mary, not through LinkedIn. I would not necessarily send her a message, although I could, but Mary may not be checking her LinkedIn very often. Most people don't. So I might send her a message, but then I would probably follow up with an email. And to find her email, by the way, I'm sharing all this as generic information for everybody, right? Even though we're using you Saul as an example. So I would click on Mary's profile. Because she's my first level, I can go here to contact info, and 9 times out of 10, her email is going to be here. And sure enough, it is. All right. 1 time out of 10, you might find somebody who's so private, they don't even allow their email address to be shared with even their first levels. But most people have their email. But again, you can only find the person's email if it's a first level connection. So I would email her and say, hi, Mary, notice that you're connected to, Susie Q. So Rana in this case, right? Would love to connect with her. Would you consider brokering an introduction? Now, there's my relationship to Mary. So hopefully Mary will say, yes, I'm happy to do that. But then there's Mary's relationship to Rana, which I don't know what that is. So hopefully Mary will say, sure, happy to forward it. But maybe Mary and Rana don't really know each other. Maybe Mary's like, well, I don't really know Rana, don't feel as comfortable. And that's okay. You just keep on going through the list, right? And see whoever you can find that might be connected to that manager. And maybe somebody is going to be open to brokering that introduction. And then, Saul, if nobody is, you reach out directly. In fact, what I would suggest, because you're looking for something that's local, walk in the front door. You can do that. All right. Most people can't these days, as I was just like the office buildings and whatever. You have to go through email. In your case, because it's a service industry, you can go the road less traveled and put on your button down and khakis and walk on in, right? And just explain to the receptionist, which there probably is one, right? Your situation, and that you'd like to, talk to and find the name of the person, obviously, before you go in. And I would just put on your friendly smile and, and do it. Nothing wrong with that. But I first try to see if you can get a warm introduction.
Thank you.
Saul, in terms of networking, one of the things that you've got going for you, and we say this all the time, one of the most important things about job search is focus. And you seem to have a clear focus in terms of exactly what you want. So as you're networking and talking to people, make sure you're communicating to everyone you talk to, exactly what you've communicated here. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for, an operations manager position. Maybe that's the wrong terminology, but communicate to them what you're looking for, a small business, operations manager, office manager, whatever title you think would would be most helpful to people.
I
Because
appreciate it.
if you say that to enough people,
Yeah.
somebody somewhere is going to say, "Oh yeah, my brother-in-law runs a HVAC system, and he's looking for someone like you."
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
On the note with just walking in, so and Shira mentioned that in the text to you that so I had to focus, and what Vern has said has really touched me in the last month or so here. So Saul, I commend you on that. But in the meantime, a lot of us need cash to come in to pay rent and to pay bills and what have you. So 2 days ago, I walked into Joseph A. Banks, which is 2 blocks from where I live. And I just walked in and said hi. I didn't even put on my best. I had earrings on. So, and met a gentleman there. But what I did is went to Indeed first, look for the jobs, and then I go on the organization's website, Saul. I mean, LinkedIn and Indeed are all good, but you get more, and you can do some research through those, but their website really gives you a lot of information, and you can go to the investor site and look for who owns the company. And usually you have to scroll down to the bottom, you have to look in about us. They might have something posted online, and therefore you will see who some of the higher ups are. I used to have to do that in my professional job. And so I walked in, and the gentleman shook his hand, and I says, "Well, I want to apply." And I said, "Is the manager here, the hiring manager?" And he was like, "No." So I'll just stop with that. The long story short was the next day, because the gentleman that I spoke with said, "Come by tomorrow at 1, go online and apply." And I went on to Joseph A. Banks' website. I didn't go through Indeed. I didn't go through anything else. And I went in at 1:00, and I got the job. It's an hourly, but it's part-time, but it increased my even though I'm a high salesperson and extrovert, I still have insecurities. So it increased my insecurity. And he wanted to hire me as a manager. And I'm like, no, I haven't done that in retail. And so I'm in the process of getting hired. Now, the gentleman that I came into 2 days ago and shook his hand is the assistant manager. Didn't even know that. So you never know who's even at the front desk. It could be the owner's wife, or the owner's husband. Because if it's a wife-owned business or what have you, or child. So and so Corey, so we're playing back and forth because now we've got to go through the HR. He's got to onboard me before I can even come in. He wants me to start ASAP, but because of everything. So I say that, and then the other tip he gave me was kind of like with yours, because this is like a small business, is that he wanted me to go on Joseph A. Banks' site, which is they bought Men's Warehouse. He wanted me to go on that site to apply. Because if you go through Indeed or something else, then they have to get the HR manager involved and blah, 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 blah. And he was like, good. So, and then I was like, do you need any references? He was like, no. And I guess it's because if I don't work out, he could just fire me with the sales clerk position. So I say that with what Shira, complimenting what Shira said and just walking in. And he was like, he's what's the next one after Gen X? I don't think he's Gen X. I think
you mean millennial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so funny. He was like, you walked in. He goes, we don't hear of that anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And so I think even with, I can tell from your personality, just like Shira's saying, it's back to the old cold call. And Shira and Vern, he had 12 interviews for either a manager full-time and a part-time, 6 no-shows.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I know we hear that, but it was to sit with him, and the fact I showed up on time. I had no idea that I was going to be in an interview. And so then the assistant manager was there the next day. So he went out he goes, I'm going to bring him in to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And I was like, oh my gosh, good thing I ate before I went, because, you never know. Right. And so Jonathan didn't even come back because he had already met me. So it's it really reinvigorated me, and it took time. So I want to encourage you, with that and the others on the call too. I know I've taken a little time here, but there's so many different ways to connect. But I do use the website of the organization.
I appreciate that. That's a good
An
idea.
investor, because it could be a small business that they run it, but it could be a bigger group that's the investor.
And Saul, I just sent you privately a bunch of information on 2 different business networking groups, Context Create Cash and Business Advisory Circle, which meet virtually, and I put the information in there. One, I put the Zoom link because you can actually just show up to Context Create Cash and Business Advisory Circle. You'll want to go to their website and hit the Contact Us page. Both really good, solid groups.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone's comments and ideas.
Sure. Ty, I know you've been have your hand raised, unless Diana, you had something for Saul.
No, I have a question.
Okay, so let's go Ty and then Diana.
2 quick comments. Yeah, I agree with going directly to the employer's website. Even if it's a large corporate, go directly instead of going through that third party Indeed or whatever it is. I think that when you go through a third party, there's chances something's going to happen on the way to the store. So I agree with that. And so I applaud you also for your focus on your job search. One thing that came to my mind has been suggested to me is make sure that you are involved in such community groups, which are the chamber. But I'm also thinking of, someone said to me, well, what about Sertoma Lions Club and those types of groups out there? So I'm going to get involved in that because there are a lot of business people that attend those types of groups.
Appreciate it.
All right, Diana.
Yeah, I actually have 2 questions, but the first one is this in terms of appropriate next steps. The founder of a startup who I wrote an article for some months ago was kind enough to mention me to a woman, and we connected. She is the vice president of content for a company that I would be interested in. And I sent her some writing samples, and she followed up with an email that said, I would love you to meet so-and-so, who's their sort of their HR talent person. And that was just Monday. And I emailed her and said, great. And I emailed him and I said, please, let me know what's a convenient time to talk. So that was Monday, and now it's Friday. And there's just been no activity. So my question is, what's the most appropriate next step to either or both of them, rather than just kind of sitting here waiting? What can I do next?
So here's the thing. I like to say in these things, pack your patience. Okay, truly. And speaking as a recruiter, and Vern has certainly been in those shoes as well, HR, you need to pack your patience because it's urgent for you. It's not urgent for them. They got a million things going on, right? And it's appropriate for you to be asking this question because clearly you don't want to be nudgy. Like, I know that, right? That's why you're asking. So I would definitely sit tight. Sit tight. Did they say when they're going to get back to you? Did they give you an indication?
No, she just said she was really busy. I mean, she used the word love. I loved, I really hooked into that word. I would love you to meet. So that's a good sign.
And that was Monday, this past Monday?
Yes.
She said, I'd love you to meet so-and-so.
Or to contact, yes, or to be, yes, meet.
She wants to put you in touch with this other person.
Yes, and he would have to initiate the scheduling.
Oh, I see. So she's actually giving you, it's not like, oh, I'll just get back to you. It's, I actually want you to meet so-and-so.
And he would have to,
okay. Then if in that
send me an invitation.
In that particular case, today actually would be a good time to follow up.
Only really?
Yes. Only because it's been enough days for her to have tried to connect with him, and if she forgot or she got busy or whatever. And since she actually said, I want you to meet so-and-so, but it's just a scheduling issue, this is an appropriate time. Where I would have used the more pack your patience is if she just said, well, you're under strong consideration. We'll let you know about any next steps. If she kept it very generic, as in, hey, you had a first level and maybe you'll get a second level, that's different. Then you'd have to just
We're not even there yet. She just sort of said, well, thank you for understanding. And she copied him on the email to me. So that's why he needs to take the next step.
I see, I see.
He could be busy. It's
So
his
yeah, he could
schedule.
just be busy. I would do one follow-up today. I would, and just say, hi, so-and-so. You might even want to write to it's the gentleman, right? So
Yes,
write to him and CC her and say, hi, so-and-so, I'm sure your schedule's been busy. For your convenience, let me provide you a few times next week that I'm available if that works for your schedule. Nothing wrong
I
with
love
that.
that.
Yeah.
That sounds perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
A little
that's great.
proactive.
Yeah. And
I love
and
that.
and you may still not hear from him.
That's all right.
But
But at least it gives him some concrete times to choose from,
Yeah.
rather than having him, he's so busy and he's got to find the time. And in networking in general, I'll just jump as a jumping off point. In general, whenever you're scheduling, I know Alice, you probably, because you're in sales, you've probably done this like technique. Whenever you're trying to schedule with anybody, the very best thing you can do is offer them times to choose from, rather than say things like generically like, oh, Sue and so would love to connect sometime, or even better, let me know when you're available. Never do that. Whenever you say, let me know when you're available, that's way too much. That's way too open for them. People get overwhelmed. They get busy. They're not thinking. They're like, yeah, whatever. When you specifically give them times, it makes it much more concrete for them to choose something. You're giving them some very few select options, and it actually tends to move the process forward better, because they can focus in on and select something rather than have to select everything.
Yeah,
Or not
great.
select and then offer you. Like they could say, oh, those don't work for me, but this
Mhm.
works for me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Because it's
We
something to
have-
work
so
with.
sometimes I forget, I get squirrely about what do I offer, but just offer something and then
Something.
get the conversation
Right.
going. And I have found, Diana, a lot of times, they love it when people follow up because everything falls through the cracks.
That's right.
And just like
Mhm.
what Saul is doing as he's there to help an office keep running and take it away from the, so they want someone who's going to follow up with their vendors or with their clients, because it's that give and take per se.
It's being proactive. Yeah.
Proactive.
Yeah. And
Great.
another quick thing with the timing, either give like one time or give like 3 or 4. Don't give like 10. Or,
Right.
you know what I mean? Or give like maybe 5 dates, but don't, again, it can be really overwhelming if you give this really super long list, like 1 or maybe 3, 4, 5 dates, and that's it. And within the next week. And that's it. And then hopefully they'll choose
Right.
some. If not, they'll let you know when they're available.
Mhm. Terrific.
Kira?
Question.
Oh,
Do I have time for another question?
Oh, unless Saul, you wanted to comment on this.
Yes, research shows 3.
3.
Give 3 different dates or times.
3
You
dates.
don't want to overwhelm them with 5.
Mhm.
1 or 2 is not enough, so 3 seems to be a magic number.
Good to know. Great. The second is, and I'm rusty, I guess I should know this, but nevertheless, 2 people have said to me that I've engaged with recently, and they have looked at my profile. How can I help you? How can I help you? I mean, love those words, but then I'm trying to, one is a freelance writer. In fact, she's a ghostwriter, and I have complimented her on her posts, and she was on a webinar recently. And then another woman who's a VP of HR. And I was thinking, well, do I look at because I believe this is a technique to look at their connections on LinkedIn to see if there's ever any commonality. I have done that with someone else, and boy, it just seemed to be so tedious, and it didn't really reap too much in terms of finding a connection that we could work with. So is there anything else I should be thinking?
Yeah, Diana, let me see if I can reframe what you just said. When you said looking through their contacts to find a connection, what were you actually referring to? What was the
There are connections on
right,
I'm connected to them, so
for what purpose?
for the purpose to see if there's any commonality with anyone else that they know that speaks to what I'd be looking for in terms of strategic communications.
Yeah, right. So finding a connection right, so that you could then follow, that they could introduce you to, that would actually be helpful in your job search, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that actually is a very good technique. I mean, I recommend people do that all the time, but it all depends on
Right.
the person that, like, you have to be very intentional about who that person is or who those people are. Because of course, not everybody, there's a lot of variables here
Yeah.
that may or may not be the right person, just for whatever reason. It may be somebody that your first level connection, the person you're having the networking call with, doesn't have a good relationship with. It could be that the person you're talking to with forgets to do the introduction. I mean, there's a lot of different variables here, but one of the things you can do is, come up with 3 to 5 people from their list that you believe would be good connections for you for whatever reason. And then if you get permission from your contact, so I'm just going to make up names. Okay. So the person you're having a coffee chat with is Susie. Okay. And you go onto Susie's LinkedIn profile to find that she's got, these 5 people that you want to be introduced to. I'd say to Susie on the call, hey, Susie, before our chat today, I looked on your LinkedIn and I looked at your contacts and I noticed these 5 people that I'd be really interested in talking with. Susie, first of all, do you know these 5 people well enough? And do you feel comfortable brokering an introduction? That's number 1. And she'll say, well, these 3, but not those 2. Fine. Okay. Now you've narrowed it down to 3 people. All right, Susie, because you are so busy, of course, everybody's busy. They're just so busy. Would it be okay if I sent you 3 separate email introductions that you can simply forward, which means that she'll have ticklers in her inbox. So you would then say, Susie gives you permission, and then you write, and you, after the meeting, and say, hi, Susie, thanks so much for agreeing to introduce me to Fred Smith, right? Here again, here's why I'm interested in talking to him. And here's my resume, whatever. Thanks for brokering the introduction. All she has to do is hit forward and go, hey, Fred, one-liner, hey, please meet Diana, and that's it. And then you follow up with Fred. Don't wait for Fred to follow up with you. Say, thanks, Susie, right? Exclamation point. Hi, Fred, nice to meet you. Here, would you be open to getting together? If so, here are a few dates. So you kind of keep it going. Because otherwise, if you fall in her court, she might just forget. She gets too busy.
Yeah.
People, right? It's like we're all spammed with emails these days, and we're on to the next thing. So you got to just push forward a little bit.
Yeah, Diane, I also want to go back to the first thing you said. The person said, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Okay. And I agree with everything that Shira is saying, but in that moment, if you're meeting with them and that person says, how can I help you? You got to be able to tell them right there and then, here's what I'm looking for. This is, again, focus. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's where my skills and expertise really fit. Do you happen to know of any potential opportunities in that area, or can you connect me to someone who you think might be helpful in terms of helping me find opportunities, or just someone in that same area who could be a colleague or someone to talk about another professional that does exactly the same thing you do. So start there.
Yeah,
and
that's
in
good.
the moment say that. But then again, to do everything that Shira said is another way, because the person you're talking to may not think about all their connections at that one time, right? And they may just, the first one that comes to mind, they may give you, and then you can go back and say, when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, I see you're connected to so-and-so, and I'd really like to meet so-and-so. Is that a possibility? So.
All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, David. Oh, sorry, Vern.
Just another comment on LinkedIn. So, because this just happened to me in the last 24 hours. Somehow, somebody I'm connected to came up on LinkedIn, and I looked at mutual connections, and I didn't know a single one of those people. All they were names.
Yeah.
What happens on LinkedIn.
That's right.
Conversely, somebody in the DC area, I can't remember his name, but we had like 30 mutual connections, and honest to God, 28 of them are people. I think Shira, you were on that list. Okay. They were people that I actually have real, significant relationships with. So I immediately said, you and I should talk. We have a lot in common in terms of the people we know. So, I'm going to talk to this person next week. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite an exercise because it involves, of course, getting to the profile, searching it, seeing what might work, and then if there's nothing there, moving on to, and talking about doing that with one person and 500 of them. So it's just a little bit laborious.
It is. It's business. And you know what it is? It's really the business development process. Job search is sales. We don't realize this, but you are Diana Inc., regardless of whether you have a consulting firm. Just like in general, as a job seeker, you are an Inc. You are marketing yourself just like a business would. It's the same process. Alice has been in sales for 1,000 years, right? She knows the whole business development process. You can look very good for 1,000. And she knows, right, about building the what's called the pipeline. It's a sales funnel. You got to do a lot of research and a lot of filling in at the top, a whole lot, in order for it to get narrower and narrower until you actually get a sale, right? Yeah. So just be thinking about that, Diana. Yes, it is hard work. It is proactivity. Everybody has to go through this, because that's the difference between doing a proactive job search versus doing a reactive job search online through the job boards. With the job boards,
Yeah.
There's really two different concepts here. With the job boards, you are now, you're competing, and not that you're saying that you're doing that, but just for everybody here. With the job boards going on to, Indeed or CareerBuilder or LinkedIn's job board, you are competing with hundreds of other people. You just are.
Yeah.
Especially these days with remote work, there's that much more competition.
Oh my gosh.
So when you go, so that's the reactive hit, submit, hit, submit, hit, submit. The proactive way, which is what you're doing, is the road less traveled, but it does take more work. There's no question. It's the same thing with, again, somebody who's actually in a small business. Vern is the same way, right? If we're going to go and market ourselves, the best way for us to do that is relationship building. That takes time. It just does. And I know that we all are instant gratification, microwave kind of society. We all do that. We want the job search to be over and done quickly, but there is a lot of competition. And I would say even generationally, there's a lot of competition, because we have people who are at one stage of career and another, and a lot of people are competing for the same roles now. You literally could have 3 generations of people competing for the same role. Easily. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that way before. We had a much more traditional sort of hierarchical thing. Now, people take all kinds of jobs at all kinds of different stages of life, and competing with the 25-year-old competing with the 65-year-old. It's like all bets are off. Everybody's in it, and then we have a pretty robust market. And so building those relationships, taking the time to do that, is worth it, because that's the road less traveled, right? And people and employers, just like any other person, want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And you know that, right? Mm-hmm. So taking the time is, I know it's laborious, but it's worth it. It really is.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm. Well, and thinking about that with Salt, I know Salt's getting all the attention today. That's what you get for being a newbie. So like with that, like I'm encouraged, because I'd love to do like what Salt, like so micro focused, what, like you could sell yourself. Like there's probably business owners out there that need someone like you, and they don't even know it. Right. That comes down to salary, and maybe you could do 2 part-time positions, or something, and benefits and what have you. But I'm just thinking about this chiropractor I went to, and he's got this whole office, but he does everything, and he owns the business. Maybe he just hasn't met someone, because they really want a trusted advisor. And that's really what I see you as. And so why would, if I have my own business, all the money tied up to it, go to Indeed to find, or go to LinkedIn? I want someone I can trust, right, and do that. So I was thinking of Dr. Joe, like sending you his, just, you wouldn't tell him where you found me, but he's out in Sterling, and he would be somebody who, because it's just funny. Like he was pulling up my records and paying the bills, and I was just like, but this was during the shutdown. So, the offices were barely open. So.
But that's all the more reason why, Saul, you can maybe walk into these offices and show your bright, shiny face, right? And show that you're trustworthy. And that could make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate, Alice, that idea. And Sterling is not off my list. And if you want to, and if you're able to, I would love to have the information of that doctor. Because he went to school, and his love is doing chiropractic care. Does he want to communicate with the insurance companies? Is this covered? Is he want to doing scheduling, taking payments? he could increase the number of patients he sees a day. Imagine him doing that all day long and taking, let's say, 20–30% of his time during the day and doing other things like making appointments, taking payments, as I said, ordering supplies for,
Yeah.
the tables, getting tables fixed, or just having the lights on and taking care of, communicating with the management of his office. If he
Right.
doesn't own it himself, and if he owns it, he's not going to want to deal with taking care of the maintenance. That's not what he went into chiropractic care for. He's going to want to focus on his patients and that care. And what I say is, my real benefit, my real genius to the owners is I let them have more of their time back to do what they love.
Mhm. Right.
Excellent.
Yeah, he's a special character. I'll give you the information. He and his wife own it, but he also would know other people. So sometimes it's not just selling them on your services, but networking, as we're saying, that he may know someone else. He's been around for a long time, and he healed me and through my trauma that I went through an attack, and it was unbelievable. But it was interesting. But he may just want control because he wants to only work so much.
That is the other side of that coin,
Yeah.
that I have come across. And you have, as an owner, you have to be willing to say, I trust you. I've talked to you enough. Check in with me once a week, twice a week. We'll have little meetings, short meetings. The owner that says, I really like control over everything. No, I want to approve everything you're doing. I want to have checks like all the time. It's not going to save them enough time, because they don't want to be involved at every step of everything I'm working on when they don't need to be. What they want to do is focus on what they do. Let me focus on what I do for you.
One of the things also, Saul, as you're doing your networking, is to network with people who those small businesses outsource to. For example, an outsourced bookkeeper, an outsourced accountant, those kinds of folks, because those folks have their own little small business. They know lots and lots of small businesses.
Wow.
And may very well know about opportunities within those companies for another office manager. Very likely.
Yeah, that was a small association I worked for, Shira Truckload. Their accountant, HR, she's not really HR, but she does the benefits. And they're located out there. I'll put it in the chat because that might be something good, Shira, for you to. So that's.
So.
Yeah, I also handle, I'm not a licensed HR, I don't have a SHRM accreditation, but I do payroll, I do benefits,
Yeah.
I do employee interaction and counseling. I mean, I've done all this stuff for years, so I can do that too.
Good, solid generalist. That's great.
I am a generalist, yes.
Which is good for an office manager, right? That's what you want to be.
Mhm.
So, all right, David, good to see you. I know you are employed, so I'd love to hear how we can help you today.
Oh, just priming the pump to some degree here. It's always good to hear the chat. Saul, I would say that you got a good value proposition going. So I think it's just your chance to get on a soapbox and get out and tell people. You'll connect with somebody. So good for you. I'm actually meeting with Shira later today. And so we've had a lot of talk, and it's been an internal struggle for me about Shira's verbiage, tribe versus lane. And so we'll be discussing later this afternoon about that. So we've talked a lot about some of the public safety, emergency preparedness work that I've done, and she's tried to get me to focus in on capitalizing on that. And you know, it's something of a journey because I've been a I guess a generalist. I've had a lot of great experiences, but you know, you really have to speak to employers about meets qualifications, because when they list something, you've got to be able to tell the story about the value that you bring. So most recently, I started a job with FEMA. They have a cadre of people, which they call a cadre. They have 23 of them, I think, and these are people who actually go out to disasters, but they're not sitting in an office, so you're not being paid unless you actually are deployed. But at least it puts another oar in that water for me, along with some past experiences. So I kind of, the reason I'll be working with Shira this afternoon is to look at my LinkedIn profile, and not my federal resume, but my regular resume, and to update that, because there are some people that I need to network with and I need to have up-to-date information, and you know, it'll be good for me to be able to articulate that in an up-to-date way. So that's the purpose of our discussion this afternoon. But for me, it's been the ability to articulate your value proposition. You know, what is it that you can deliver? That's why I thought, Saul, it was really interesting listening to you, because you're on that journey. You're just trying to figure out who to connect to. Somebody out there. There's got to be a number of somebodies. You've got the story, you know, you just package it together a little bit more tightly, but you've got a great story to tell. That's kind of where I need to be as I continue to connect with people. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, David. So just to extrapolate a little bit, you mentioned the whole tribe and lane thing. I now call it community and lane. Anyway, but same. Here's what I mean by that. It's a branding concept. I believe that your lane is your profession. It's what you do, right? Usually has a title associated with it. It's what you do. Your community is who you do it for. The industry, mission, sector. So Saul, in your case, right, you're in the office manager lane. And I would say that your community is the professional services community, and more specifically in Northern Virginia. Okay. And maybe that has some, you know, subtext around medical, legal, accounting, whatever, but small business professional services in Northern Virginia, office managers lane. That is a very clear brand. That's why you were able, in your little elevator pitch in the beginning, to explain, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I want to do it for. Oh, and by the way, here's the value that I bring. Because you understand the value of what you do in light of who you do it for. Because you're not just saying, I want to be an office manager at Amazon or something, right? You're saying small professional services businesses who just don't have the time to handle all that office managery stuff, right? And I can save them time so they can do what they love. And that's a very, very clear brand. And so somebody like David is trying to get even more refined in that way. And I know a lot of people have that challenge, because it's sort of, for most people, it's like this jumble of, what do I do? Who do I want? What do I really want to do? Well, who do I really want to do it for? Is all of that. But getting clear helps not only you with your networking, but helps the employer to understand how you can help them. And I would also go another step and say this, and I've said this a lot, because employers are so risk averse, say that again, they are so risk averse, to the extent that you can identify an opportunity that is as close to what you've done. In other words, where you're aligning what they do to what you've done, they feel happier and happier and safer and safer. I'll give you a very live, hot, off the press example, literally right this hot second. So I mentioned I'm a recruiter. I'm literally about to, Lord willing, wrap up a search today. Okay, checking references, the whole thing. Let me explain why I'm bringing this up. So this is a marketing communications manager for a trade association. Okay. Did my search. Employer said, you know what? We don't necessarily need association experience. And they meant it. They actually meant it. Okay. They allowed me to go outside the sector and look for corporate people. Okay, fine. So I did. First, I brought association people, whatever, a couple of people to work out, whatever. So then I expanded to corporate. And I brought this woman who is just fabulous, corporate, no association experience. Oh my gosh, they loved her, right? Okay. But they wanted to see one more person as comparison. Employers tend to do that sometimes. Fine. As it happens, the next person I brought to them just so happened to have a full what? Association background. You know where I'm going with this, right? So even though candidate number one was, dreamy, loved her, when they met this other person, but now she's got the extra, okay? And they're like, oh, she'll fit in. So she understands what we do, that she gets it, right? An easy fit. And that's the person they want to go with, even though they love the first person. My point, though, is that to the extent that you can find that opportunity where they feel that way, where they feel that safety, will be a much easier fit. And I have got a million examples of this. In fact, one of them was right from here, this HMM call, because we call this HMM. I don't know, remember Vern, what was her name? Well, anyway, she came from the recruiting background. She was an administrative assistant within the recruiting sector, as it happens. And she decided she wanted to get out of it. She wanted to do administrative work somewhere else. Man, months and months and months and months of networking. I mean, just could not land. And then one day she wakes up and she's, you know what? I got to go back to my old stomping grounds. And she decided to apply to another executive search firm. This is months after trying to get out of that sector. And sure enough, like right away, right? She gets a job. Why? Because the employer felt safe. Now, I'm not
Is
saying
that
you have to.
Shelby?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying you have to do it this way. There are people who've made career shifts. It happens, but it takes a lot of intentionality and it typically takes a lot of time. But to the extent that you can keep it tight, right? And go after the thing that it's going to make the employer feel safe. If you feel comfortable with that kind of role in that kind of industry, it's going to be a lot easier to get that role. And Vern and I know that because of all the searches that we've done, right? Where employers are like, apples to apples, Macintosh to Macintosh, Fuji to Fuji, not even apples to apple, like very specific, the close, because they don't have time to train. And their feeling is that the more you understand their industry, the kind of clients, members, customers that they serve, the kind of environment, the pace, that's why people who are making full sectoral shifts have such a hard time. Someone wants to go from corporate to nonprofit or nonprofit to corporate or government to corporate or like those big sectoral changes, very challenging because that employer feels like, oh, well, you don't understand our nonprofit world or our corporate world or our government world. And then more specifically, we're in the environmental sector and you're in the whatever sector. Like it can get very, very nichey. So just walk a mile in the employer's shoes to the extent that you line up, that your background lines up, will be the easier thing, which means you want to go through your background and say, all right, are there kinds of sectors that I've been in that I feel comfortable with continuing in? Right? That where I can go proactively pursue that environment where the employer will feel like, okay, so for example, in Alice's case, making this up, right? I know one of the kinds of companies she used to work for was the newspaper industry, okay, as an example. Let's just play pretend and say that Alice actually would be interested in working for that sector again. That could be an easier fit for her because another newspaper is going to look, oh, she worked for a major publication, okay? And they would say, oh, right? She gets it. She gets us. We feel like she's family. That's actually how employers feel when they see that you've worked for a company or an organization that is directly in their sector. Is that helpful? Just for a mindset?
That's helped me.
Okay.
Because I need to get that job maybe at a newspaper and then look outside, look while I'm working over the next couple of years. But I've been floundering, as you know, some other stuff has come up. But that was the same thing with Corey, who wanted to hire me, wanted me to be a retail manager at the store. And I'm like, I've never been one. He said, have you ever managed people? I'm like, no, but he was younger. And it was like, I know my limitations. And so let me come in almost as attempt to hire, let me come in and part-time. And now he's like backpedaling, like, well, I don't know how many hours I can give you. And I go, that's okay. I can walk down, I can leave my purse at home. and not even wear a coat, while I, keep adding up, trying to get some cash and what have you. So I love that, what you just shared, because that speaks to me as I'm seeking. And it's like, and that's what Robert and Sheer will talk later, that it's like, you got to, I'm a salesperson. I need to get over it. And as hard as it is, I'm not the hardcore, but, in sticking with my industry and then letting God open up the doors for that industry change, allowing God to lead and sticking with the skills that he's given me. He's gotten me to this point for so long. So let me get back now that I have a clearer head than when I was at my newspaper job years ago, and been looking outside of the industry, because it's better, right, to look for a job while you're in one.
While you're in one. And something else too, I would also invite you all, those of you who are thinking about industry sectoral shifts, to think about why want to make that shift. Let me sit here for a second. Don't assume that that's supposed to be your sector. People have all kinds of perceptions and misperceptions about what another sector might be and why they're interested in going for it. Sometimes, often actually these days, it's because it's mission driven, a mission that maybe aligns with your heart. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of people make those shifts, but understand when you go to that organization that's in that new sector, let's just say it's mission driven, it's still an organization. It's still got people problems. It's got infrastructure problems. They have to make the sausage somehow. Yes, they're serving a mission that you love, and that's great. But
And they also have their own, they also have their own culture.
Yeah, and it's a job. It's a job, right? And so you might ultimately, you're serving in the, but I just want to take the bloom off the rose here, because I know a lot of people who get very disillusioned. They'll go into that new thing saying, oh, but the mission, but then it's a job. Now, again, not saying you shouldn't do it. If your Lord's leading you, go do it, but do it for the right reasons. And it might be that if you want to help that mission, maybe you do it as a volunteer. Right, where you can just really serve in the way that you feel to serve, and you don't have to deal with all the other, organizational stuff, and you just get to work with the people or get to do whatever the thing is, and then do what, in the Bible Paul calls it tent making. You make your tents, you do your thing,
right.
you do your job. And then this over here, you've got maybe more of your mission oriented, right, kind of work. Not saying you have to do that, but if you're trying to make a shift, just be thinking about your why and what you're actually looking for, and what that actual environment might be when you go to this next organization.
Yeah. So if you follow that path, I mean, two things you can do. The volunteering part, even if you volunteer, you'll get a little bit more insight into that particular area. You might even get a little bit more insight into the organization just by volunteering. And then the other thing you can do from a networking standpoint is simply have as many informational interviews as you can with people who are either in that organization or know that sector really well. And tell me the pros, tell me the cons, what am I not seeing that might be there that I don't know about? Just an informational interview with people in your network or people you get introduced to through your network that really can help you vet that before you make the leap. If at the end of the day some people, Shira knows this, some people do make that leap and they're very successful, going from human resources to technology, but it's usually pretty rare. So
yeah, and that was me when I was looking at Parkinson's, because my mother died with Parkinson's. So I volunteered. I was a chair of moving day, and I wanted to work for Parkinson's disease network, either out of New York or out of South Florida. I could not get in.
Right.
What you're saying is just stick with the volunteering and get, there's probably a culture niche. They saw me as this volunteer and this person, and it wasn't with the organization.
Right.
They help with something else. And I know we're closing up here, so and next week or offline, but for me, as this light bulb has gone off, and it's God's timing, is because of my career break, I'm wondering now that would be easier for me to go back to my tent making, because they're not going to look at my career break. They're going to go, I'm just going to go this, and not ask me so many questions.
They may not.
Back to my what was
Like
going
very
on.
likely, and they're gonna want to like you. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
When people look at a resume that they're like, oh, she worked there, they want to like you. They want it to work.
I know.
Rather than looking for reasons to screen you out, they're going to be more likely to look for reasons to screen you in.
Okay, I'm gonna start crying. Yeah, and that's kind of what happened yesterday. I'm not retail, but I'm really good at retail. And I didn't want TJ Maxx. I was behind a cash. He's like, why'd you leave TJ Maxx? I said, because I was behind a cash register ringing people up and selling credit cards. I want to be, and God, Shira put me in Joseph Banks, which is mainly men.
Isn't that interesting?
As a single girl. Yeah. So it's fun. I get to dress because my dad's dead. My brother-in-laws don't dress anymore. They're all retired. And I, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, this will be fun, right?
Why not?
Like, nope. So we'll see. I haven't started yet. So I
Okay.
have to like dial back. But very powerful.
So with that, Diana, any questions or any other thoughts?
May I? No, I really have enjoyed listening to you, Alice. In fact, I noticed you're in Alexandria. We're going to have to connect. I'm in Alexandria. So,
Terrific. Yeah, I'm in
I'll-
Old Town. Uh-huh.
wonderful. Okay. I have a follow-up question. This is very quick, but it relates to the situation that I mentioned earlier, and it's this. And it's again, relationships. What do I say next? The gentleman who was kind enough to introduce me to this VP person, who is as I mentioned, he's the founder of a startup. I want to write him and just say, well, this is what's going on. Thank you very much. I've, sent them an email. Now, is it something that I should not do, which would be in any way to ask if there were, how can I say this? Maybe it's not the appropriate thing to do. He knows other people. Is there a way to keep my search going by finding out if there's anyone else he could recommend, even though I'm in this situation where he has recommended someone, there's some progress there, very little, but it's moving. And I want to at least thank him and let him know that. But do I end it there and just
So
don't say?
quick clarifying question. This gentleman who you're talking about, does he work at the company that you were interviewing with, or he just was a networking referral and referred you into that company?
He's a gentleman. I wrote an article about him and we had a few conversations, and he suggested this new company, the woman that I've mentioned, as a person to connect with. And so the question is there
Yeah.
anyone else he could suggest?
Absolutely. Oh, 100% go back to him and ask that question. There's not, Diana, that's not even a question. That's not
Oh,
even a
really?
question. Not even a question. Go back and say, hey, thank you so much for introducing me to Susie. We're moving forward. If you have any other suggestions, would love to hear it, because he referred you to her. That means he could refer you to other people, and he's happy to help you because he knows that just because he referred you, there's no guarantee it's going to work out. He's just trying to
Right.
help you with the job. So
Okay,
please
good.
go back.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And
You have-
it sounds like you're do what I do. You're thinking about it too hard, Diana. It's very, very easy. Very easy. And I'm not a coach. I'm not an HR coach like Shira and them, but like I'm on LinkedIn, do a blurb, send it to me, send it to some people that you know and say, this is what I want to send and have it. There's nothing wrong with having somebody look at it, but you're kind of overthinking it. It's, hey, I'm just touching base again. Here's some dates that I'm available and I really want to work for you. And, and anything else with the other gentleman that,
Yeah.
it's
I
really,
mean,
yeah. Go
if
ahead.
this
Sorry.
I mean, this person's already connected you to somebody and you're
Yes.
moving forward.
Yes.
So again, the worst case scenario, is there anybody else that you know that you can connect me to? He said, no, he might say, no, there's really not. This is the one person I think can help you.
Mhm.
And that's it. On the other hand, as Shira said, the likelihood that he's got other people in his network that might be able to help you is probably pretty high.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for the green light.
Yep.
Keep the networking going. Yep. And just keep talking to people. Never know. You never know. Fern and I like to tell this story without getting to all the specific detail, but we had a person on this call a long time ago who was on this call for a long time. And one day she came and said, "Hey, we got a job." And we said, "How'd you get it?" Because we like to share these things. And there's a whole story about she was from Michigan and she was here visiting the DC area and she was out with some friends at a jazz club or something. And she goes up to the band leader at the end to say, you know, really like your stuff. And one thing led to another. And sure enough, the band leader's day job was like in a, I don't know, it was a medical office. And he goes, "Oh, and she, why are you here?" "Yeah," she's, "I'm looking for a job." "What do you do?" And Saul was actually, she's like an office manager. "Oh, I'm looking for an office manager." And she gets hired. Right. It's
Amazing.
just network and let the
It's
Lord open the doors.
beautiful. Mhm.
Yeah. And the
I
key.
gotta go out to a jazz club tonight then.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Talk to the band
key,
leader.
the key to that story is, and the woman's name was Sandy. She was actually walking out and she said, "You know, I really should thank the band because they had convinced her to stay to listen to the music." And she said she had a great time. And so it was this simple gesture of her walking back in and saying, "Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you for the music." So giving back and just saying thank you.
Yeah.
And they're saying, "Well, why don't you stay longer?" And she said, "Well, I'm in the middle of a job search and I've got a lot of things to do tomorrow. And well, what kind of job are you searching for? What, you know,
Yeah.
do you know QuickBooks?" "Yeah, I know
Amazing.
QuickBooks. Call me Monday for an interview." It was just the most amazing story of you just, it's, as Shira said a number of times, you just never know.
I know.
You never
Yeah.
know where an opportunity can come from. Now that's going to be pretty rare, but that's what happened.
Don't you love it when you see God at work in those things, those serendipity things? I love
Yeah.
those stories.
Yeah.
They said, "What can we do for you? Where can
Yeah.
I help you?" Basically is what they said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So with that, let's go ahead and wrap up. And for those of you who want to stay on the call, I do offer a short prayer call right at the end of this, if you'd like to stay on for that. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing everybody next week, next Friday. Okay. Have a blessed day, everyone.
Take care.